Hello everybody, Perrin Lovett here for the Prepper Post News, courtesy of Freedom Prepper on Thursday, January 14th, 2021. Welcome to everybody at fp.com, the Freedom Prepper Community.com, everybody on YouTube, everybody listening via the podcast on all the spots where that is found. And today a special hello to our friends at solars.net. I see that you guys have at least once started linking in the news. A tip, if you're taking it straight off of freedomprepper.com, wait until a little later every morning because that's when we link in the video. It's a somewhat chaotic production schedule, but it ends every day with me linking in the video from YouTube or our server. And frequently the videos, I don't know if we're making sense here, but they make more sense than the notes, which are really just a glorified list of links. And you can find those every day at freedomprepper.com. But hello to everybody at Solars, where yes, I'll read your notice. Social media and big tech are shutting down conservative content, libertarian content, a lot of liberal content, and of course people on the hard right. So it is important to have all of the options that we have to discuss the big things. And I want to talk about some questions that people had at the community about news and instant availability of news. But first, let me get through some feature stories. It's been a busy week. Said this is going to be a party month, and it is kind of taking a toll. I know. I can sense when you guys are a little put out with all this stuff. I feel it too, but we'll get through it. Don't worry about it. So yeah, Washington D.C. has been a train wreck forever, and it is officially now under a state of emergency. Has been since Monday. This snuck by. I didn't see this. All they're talking about, Alabama didn't get any credit. Congratulations to Bama. Didn't get any credit for winning the college football championship because all anybody wants to talk about is Pelosi, Trump, impeachment, 25th Amendment, insurrection, blah, 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 on the mainstream. And on the alternative press, it's all over the place. We're going to talk about that, how to deal with that. But this story came directly from the White House. I've got a link, and I'll just read you the beginning of this declaration of emergency that was issued, I guess, the evening of the 11th, when some other really funny stuff was happening. Today, President Donald J. Trump declared that an emergency exists in the District of Columbia and ordered federal assistance to supplement the district's response efforts due to the emergency conditions resulting from the 59th presidential inauguration from January 11th to January 24th, 2021. The president's action authorizes the Department of Homeland Security, FEMA, to coordinate all disaster relief efforts which have the purpose of alleviating the hardship and suffering caused by the emergency on the local population and to provide appropriate assistance for required emergency measures authorized by Title V of the Stafford Act to save lives and protect property and health and safety and to lessen or avert the threat of a catastrophe. And maybe already by the time you're watching this, we know exactly what that means. A lot of this, the funny stuff, the ramped up security, restricted airspace, that goes along with a transition of power that happens every 4 to 8 years. But it's not so often that we see a state of emergency declared, getting the full government involved in D.C. for an inauguration. I mean, unless I didn't check the weather, maybe they're expecting a hurricane or something to coincide. But one thing I've noticed also with all the news that you see and you don't see, one thing we have not seen and one person we really have not heard from that much is who? Joe Biden. Or or Vice President-elect Harris, but especially Joe Biden. He came out after the protest on Capitol Hill, and he called everybody thugs and insurrectionists and neo-Nazis and all the usual names. And then he said he was going to go to war against the NRA. And that's pretty much all we've heard from him, which kind of mirrors what he did not say and did not do during his campaign. I didn't see, any support that he had, I think was a reaction against Donald Trump, not support of Joe Biden. Behind the scenes, he's building up a cabinet full of the same names from the left side of the Uniparty that have plagued us for decades. It's the same. If you're a progressive and you thought this was going to be the Green New Deal, it's not. It's just more of the same from their side. And he honestly, to me, it doesn't seem like he's that important. There's something else calling all the shots, making all the statements. Maybe he's just a figurehead. But I think he is missing a golden opportunity. For instance, when he came out and called everybody thugs, if I was him, I would have come out and said, hey, look, folks, we had a big protest up here. It got out of hand. Some bad things happened. But you know what? I understand why you did it, because you folks are upset. You think you're being marginalized. You think everything's being taken away from you. I'm your new president, and I'm going to tell you that's not going to happen, because I'm your president too, and I'm going to work for you. And then he could have, tried to, build some goodwill and then try to actually work for everybody. As far as people are concerned, he's not working for any of us. Just get that through your head. He doesn't work for any of us. Almost none of the legacy politicians do. They serve their master, and they serve him well. And their master is not the people of the United States. Not at all. So I want to know what you think about that. I noticed the comments have kind of slowed down. And I understand why. We're going to talk about that with all that's going on. It's information overload, and it kind of gets a little depressing, a little hectic. But anyway, we've got the same stuff going on. We've got the movement to impeach the president. Again, that might have already happened by the time this comes out, because he's so dangerous, because he led an insurrection. And this will leave, since he is going out, right, next week. What's the rush? Well, he might nuke the Capitol if we don't do something, right now. Not that there's time to try him in the Senate, and a real trial. We don't really do real trials anymore, but if there's not enough time for that. And do they have the supermajority votes to convict him of the impeachment charges? No, they didn't before. They don't again. It's a moot point. Why do it? Why are people whose team is victorious, why are they so, upset and acting like they lost? I don't, it's like they're really, 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 really afraid of something. They're talking about impeachment, the 25th. The FBI, that said, hey, bombing in Nashville, don't worry about that, doesn't matter, just forget it. All of a sudden, they're working and screaming their heads off that we've got, a nationwide threat of mass violence in D.C. and all 50 state capitals on the 17th, I read. I guess that's the 17th through the 20th. Something is going on. Something is going on. We'll talk more about that when we know something. And it's hard to know things. This goes to the media, because of all this censorship and the blackouts and, poor organization among all these platforms like Parler. I've got a story from Cyber News. They gave away 70 terabytes of people's private information. Just put it out there. And I saw where somebody, I couldn't tell if it was a hacker gloating or if it was somebody who, had found the depository of all this information. I tried to look at it. The link I had didn't go through. I'm not really that keen on seeing what the Parler people were saying, but apparently, somebody in there said some things or posted some things that they don't want everybody to know about, and now that is a distinct possibility. The takeaway from that is, take a good long hard look at who you're trusting with your information, what they want from you, and then, just ask yourself who's behind it. When Parler came out, it was, it's the conservative alternative to Twitter. Well, Twitter, the deep state, the media, they don't like conservatives. So why did it get so much press in the fake stream media? It's like they were pushing it like controlled opposition. And information-wise, they've pushed you straight off a cliff. Let's see, I talked about Joe and the NRA going to war. Sounds like a threat of violence, Joe. AR15.com came under some kind of cyber attack. Last time I checked, it was back up. It may be in flux. I put out a link on the community to their backup site. I run that again here if it's needed. Just be aware that, a lot of sites that we look at, people on the right, preppers, anything that has to do with firearms may go down, but there may be a backup, and these sites generally will come back somewhere. Just look around. You can usually find where that is. Guns are also going down in Michigan. Some committee that runs the state house decreed there should be no more firearms allowed in the Michigan, in Gretchen's house. We don't need guns in Gretchen's house. Don't bring your guns to town to protest, any of this lockdown madness or anything else that you don't like. Got a great quote here from the AP from somebody named Polanki. Doesn't matter who that is, but it's a telling quote. There is no reason any gun belongs in the Capitol. It's absurd. The world thinks it's absurd. It sickens me that this is even being considered as a viable action. First of all, who cares what the world thinks? Real Americans do not. And why? What's a good reason to have a gun in a Capitol? Maybe to keep them honest? You can carry guns in the capitals of several American states. Last I checked, New Hampshire let you do that. It goes back to what TJ said. When the government fears the people, there is liberty. You don't have to use them. Just letting them know that you have them. I mean, they have their police force. They have their militaries. Well, so do we. Not going to use it. It's just there to encourage a little honesty among the people who represent us, right? Nothing wrong with that. Let's see. I want to get to the media stories and how to react to them. Got something from RT about world birth rates falling, particularly in the developed world, not just the West, also in China and Japan. And this story links to another story that has some charts that many of you may find shocking. For reasons, a lot of people in the developed world just aren't having kids, and birth rates are collapsing to the point that it may lead to, a substantial cut in the world population. And there are folks that are speculating that even with the globalist immigration that's been pushed the past 50 years, that might not be enough. Now, there's a very simple solution to this that doesn't involve importing people that, are not you and are never going to become you. Hungary found the solution. They were told, hey, your population is going to drop. Populations go up and down historically. A decrease is not, as long as people aren't being murdered to get to the decrease, what's the problem? It can bounce back, and Hungary said, hey, we don't need immigrants. We can control our own population. Watch this. And they reformed the tax laws to give substantial tax credits to young people who get married and start families. And I believe if you have, it's either 3 or 4 kids, no taxes. So guess what's happening? They're starting to see their natural native population rising, and they're also, cutting taxes. You get more revenue in the end. So it's a win-win, something to look at, nothing to be afraid of, unless these reasons behind the global drop have something to do with somebody's plan. And there are plenty of people that have put forth plans to cut the population. of us, not them, not ever them. They don't want to touch them. It's always us. We're cattle to them. And, the herd gets too big, they got to cull it. I'm not going for that. And I ran something about declining church attendance during the past year for some reason, like the churches, having the doors locked either by the sheriff or, the preacher or the priest. Not good. Got some stunning graphs to look at. Overall attendance is it's Protestant and Catholic all across the West. On your high holy days, Christmas, Easter, etc., you're seeing attendance that looks a lot like the very lowest periods of the summer during a ordinary year, which was already bad enough. Not good, not good. I got a couple of books I want to recommend to you. One is a little on the pricey side. It's called The Most Dangerous Book Ever Published. I've got a link to Paul Craig Roberts, who not only contributed to it, but talks about it. There's a link to Amazon. It's a pricey book. It's all about how deceptions are used to move things towards a great reset, for lack of a better terminology. I think that's like $35. It's a big book. It's a big book, some heavy reading. Might be one of those books that Amazon might not carry for too long, if you know what I mean. So take a look at it. It'll be around in some format. I have another book in PDF form that's free. It's called Unrestricted Warfare. I've talked about it before, but it came from two Chinese colonels, military colonels. They wrote it in 1999, and it's beyond fourth generation asymmetrical warfare. It's war by and with, Clausewitz, any means, all the time, everywhere. Things that, it's warfare that you can't even see. It doesn't destroy things, it doesn't kill people, it just alters reality for a purpose, and it's constant and it's everywhere. And it's arguably been going on one-sided, one way, in the United States and possibly in Europe also for at least the past 10 years. Take a look at that link. It's free, and it's a little on the heavy side. These guys are brilliant, but it goes a long way towards helping you understand where we are and where we're going. Before I get to making sense of all this, I've got a video link to Fox Day's Dark Stream. This is an unauthorized TV video that he, as a courtesy, puts on YouTube for 2 weeks only. So take a look at that. He pulls them down preemptively, one, to drive business to unauthorized, but also so he doesn't, run the risk of a strike later on. Because those usually, there's a lag time in the strikes. But take a look at this. It's about conquering the cult of free. And not pointing any fingers here, but all of us in this digital age of information have gotten just way too used to everything being free. And, the old saying is there is no free lunch. Well, there might be, but it's not good for you. Free is not necessarily better, and it's not necessarily good. If you're paying for information, you have some stake in it. And he gives some great examples about the social media factor. He has his own social media site, much like the Freedom Prepper community, except he charges a monthly subscription. He's also got, people that are people associated with him who are on Gab and Twitter. His private site, you may have a few hundred people following, X e-celebrity, a few thousand on Gab, and tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands on Twitter. But when it comes to, getting attention, having good discussion, or making money from any of these platforms, the hundreds on the paid site generate better results than the thousands or tens of thousands on the freebies. And he points out that the reason for that is Twitter is just a bunch of people talking, and nobody is listening. And, if anybody can go on there without getting banned, what are they really contributing? And that leads me into some questions that I've seen raised by multiple people at the community. Other commenters have talked about this. I'm certainly feeling it. This week, this month, there's people talking all over, not so much of it making sense. Everybody has a narrative in their mind that they hope is true. They've got one behind that they fear might be true. The mainstream media, as somebody pointed out at the community, just doesn't, they don't report real news anymore. There used to be a time when if something major was happening, like if Alibaba, the Chinese super version of Amazon that could easily take over Amazon and which was about to be launched with the world's largest IPO ever, all of a sudden gets nationalized by the CCP, that should be enormous news. You didn't hear about it. You also didn't hear that Jonathan Pollard, the convicted spy against America, sentenced to life in prison, was pardoned by President Trump and quietly sent away on the late Sheldon Adelson's jet back in November. I didn't know about that until just now, recently. They don't report the news. I mean, like I said, the Drudge Report doesn't even run a Roll Tide acknowledgement of college football anymore. So one question I saw was, what's a good source for instant news? And I gave an answer, but the real answer is right now there's not one. I'd like to think this show is pretty good, but we're not instant. We're on a slight delay. I tend to think ahead, but technically I'm behind in time. This is more like post-wrap analysis with a little prediction about where things are going. That's great, but it's not instant reporting. And you've got to be, you don't necessarily want that because 4chan is instant. You got a million crazy people around the world just putting up. Q is instant when they post. The Q commenters are instant when they post. Anybody can go on a lot of these forums and say anything. Most of it makes no sense, and it's surrounded by all kind of filth and degeneracy that no decent person needs to look at anyway. My thought about that is, for a local story, social media and local media tends to do a pretty good job of reporting major stories that are happening, in a localized area. And you can, you might be able, if you catch it, you might be able to use that to your advantage. For instance, if you're driving east down I-40 and your passenger gets on, Twitter, and everybody's tweeting, Asheville plane crash, and then they check the local news and they're like, it appears that a plane has crashed and taken out the overpasses at I-26 and I-40. Ooh, that means that the what and why can wait. What that means for you is you need to route around Asheville, and then there's a lag time in all this instant reporting. By the time it makes the mainstream, they're going to come up with a narrative, which the first narrative they come up with is almost always wrong. It's if it's a bomb, they'll say it was a mechanical error that brought the plane down, and they'll stick to that even when it's proven to be the opposite. Use the mainstream media, what little you can find of it anymore, with a grain of salt. If you know the way they generally put a spin on things, and you can read between the lines and still get some value out of that. It's a shame we have to do that anymore. The alternative media, I think I recommended One America News and Russia Today. I'm still not sure about One America. I don't really pay much attention to it. RT, I do. That's another one you've got to read with a grain of salt, because they have very honest reporting about us, but it's always kind of with a ha-ha, look what happened to them, take to it. So the best thing to do is, not get too worried about any of this stuff that's going on, even if it is, potentially country reshaping or life changing, and just pay attention later on to, intelligent people that make sense of it, and see if you can pick out trends for the future. That's on the big issues. The day-to-day stuff, just use your best judgment, and don't get caught up in, don't be torn between what you really hope is about to happen versus what your logical brain tells you, because both could be completely wrong. There could be a third option. Something is going to happen, and it's going to be, ultimately, it's going to be good, whatever it is. So just keep that in mind. I promised somebody that I was going to try to come up with a list of better news and opinion sources. I'm going to try to work on that. I'm trying to work on all kind of stuff right now. For instance, I'm trying to work on Friday's show, which is tomorrow, which is when I will see you back here. Hope you have a wonderful day, and keep the optimism up and keep your eyes open. Perrin Lovett,